You know what finally made me embarrassed about my own furniture? It wasn't a master class. It wasn't some expensive seminar. It was watching a 68-year-old Japanese cabinet maker tap a joint together with nothing but a wooden mallet, no glue, no screws, no pocket holes, and then try to pull it apart with both hands and fail. The thing was locked, and I don't mean snug, I mean locked like it had been welded. Meanwhile, I had a bookshelf in my living room held together with pocket screws and wood glue that was already starting to wobble after 2 years. 2 years. That man's workbench was older than my truck and still tight as the day it was built. That moment changed how I think about joinery, about furniture, about what we've been settling for. Today, I'm going to walk you through 10 secrets from the Japanese Sashimono tradition that will make you look at modern furniture completely differently. And stick around until the end, because I've got a marking technique I learned from a Sashimono craftsman that I guarantee you've never seen in any Western woodworking book. Let's get into it. Sashimono is the Japanese tradition of cabinetry and furniture making, and it's one of the most refined joinery systems ever developed for everyday objects. We're not just talking about temple beams and pagodas here. This is furniture, boxes, shelves, desks, cabinets, things you and I build every weekend. And what these craftsmen figured out centuries ago is still more advanced than what most modern factories are doing today. To really appreciate what these methods are, you need to understand where they came from. Sashimono, as a recognized craft tradition, goes back to the Edo period in Japan, roughly the 1600s through the 1800s. The main centers were in Edo, which is modern-day Tokyo, and in Osaka and Kyoto. These were urban craftsmen building furniture for merchants, samurai households, and eventually for export. And here's the key constraint that shaped everything they did. Metal was expensive and often restricted. Nails, screws, brackets, all the things we reach for without thinking. They either couldn't afford them or weren't allowed to use them depending on the period and their social standing. So they had to make wood hold itself together. That's not a limitation, that's an engineering challenge, and they solved it brilliantly. The wood species they relied on most were kiri, which is paulownia, and hinoki, which is Japanese cypress. Kiri is incredibly light, about half the weight of our eastern white pine, and it has natural moisture resistance that makes it ideal for storage furniture like tansu chests. Hinoki is tighter grained, aromatic, and naturally resistant to decay. Both species were chosen not just for beauty, but because their movement characteristics were predictable. And that predictability is the foundation of everything in Sashimono. These craftsmen didn't fight wood movement. They mapped it, predicted it, and designed their joints to use it as a mechanical advantage. That single idea, working with the wood's nature instead of against it, is what separates their furniture from ours. And once you understand it, every method that follows makes perfect sense. The first thing you need to understand is why modern joints fail by design. Pocket holes, cam locks, dowels with glue, biscuit joints, these are all engineered for speed, not longevity. A pocket screw pulls two boards together with a metal fastener driven into end grain. End grain has almost no holding power. It's like screwing into a bundle of straws from the side. The joint feels tight on day one, but as the wood expands and contracts through seasonal humidity changes, that screw hole wallows out a tiny bit more each cycle. Within a few years, you've got a wobble. Within 10 years, you've got firewood. Modern furniture is designed to be assembled fast, sold fast, and replaced fast. Sashimono furniture was designed to last longer than the person who built it. The core principle of Sashimono joinery is that wood moves, and your joints should tighten because of that movement, not loosen. Every joint in the Sashimono system accounts for the fact that wood expands across the grain when humidity rises and contracts when it drops. Instead of fighting that cycle, They orient their joinery so that seasonal expansion actually presses the mating surfaces tighter together. Think about that for a second. The very force that destroys a pocket hole joint is the same force that strengthens a Sashimono joint. The joint is getting a little tighter every humid summer and relaxing just slightly every dry winter, but never loosening beyond its original fit. It's breathing with the wood. I spent 30 years treating wood movement as a problem to solve. These craftsmen treat it as a tool to use. By the way, if you are enjoying learning about these ancient methods, I put together something I think you will really appreciate. It is called Kenji's Workshop, and it is a collection of 100 ancient Eastern woodworking secrets for the modern craftsman. Techniques like the ones we are covering today, and a whole lot more. You can grab your copy by scanning the QR code on screen, or just use the first link in the description. All right, let us keep going. The third secret is one that absolutely blew my mind when I first saw it. It's a blind wedge tenon, sometimes called a fox wedge tenon in Western terminology, but the Sashimono version is refined to a level I'd never encountered. Here's how it works. You cut a tenon, typically 3/4 of an inch thick on furniture scale pieces, and you saw 2 thin kerfs into the end of it, about 3/4 of the way down. Then you place tiny hardwood wedges into those kerfs, just barely started. When you drive the tenon into a blind mortise, the bottom of the mortise pushes those wedges inward, which forces the tenon to splay out like a dovetail inside the joint. From the outside, you see nothing. No wedges, no end grain, no fasteners. But inside, that tenon is mechanically locked. It literally cannot pull out without destroying the wood around it. And as the wood expands seasonally, that splayed tenon gets pushed even tighter against the mortise walls. The joint doesn't just hold, it improves. Now the fourth secret is about presentation and precision combined. It's called Hako tome, and it's essentially a mitered box joint. Where most of us would cut a standard box joint or finger joint and leave end grain visible on one face, Sashimono craftsmen miter the outer edge so the grain wraps continuously around the corner. The miter has to be cut at exactly 45 degrees, and behind it there's a hidden interlocking tongue that provides the actual mechanical strength. What you see from the outside is a seamless corner with grain flowing around it, like the box was carved from a single block. What's inside is an engineered joint that resists racking in every direction. It takes about 4 times as long to cut as a standard box joint, but it lasts about 40 times longer. The fifth secret is something that sounds old-fashioned until you see the results. Sashimono craftsmen fit every joint by hand, dry, without glue, testing and adjusting until the fit is perfect. They use a marking gauge called a kibiki to scribe lines directly from the mating piece, not from a ruler or a measurement. This means every joint is fitted to its actual partner, not to a theoretical number. When I started doing this instead of trusting my table saw fence and a digital readout, my joints improved immediately. Not a little, dramatically. The surfaces mate so completely that glue becomes almost unnecessary. And in traditional Sashimono, many joints use no glue at all. The sixth secret is grain reading, and this goes back to that philosophy I mentioned earlier. Before cutting a single joint, a Sashimono craftsman studies the board. They look at the grain direction, the cathedral patterns on the flat sawn face, the growth ring orientation on the end grain. They're determining which way the board will cup, which direction it will want to move, and how much seasonal expansion to expect. Then they orient the joint so that movement works in their favor. A rail tenoned into a leg, for example, is oriented so that the expansion direction of the rail presses tighter into the mortise rather than pushing away from it. This isn't guessing. This is structural engineering done by reading the wood instead of running calculations. The seventh secret is about when they build, and this one surprised me more than almost anything else. Traditional Sashimono craftsmen preferred to do their most critical joinery work in winter, when humidity is low and wood is at its most contracted state. The logic is simple and brilliant. If you cut a joint when the wood is at its smallest, every expansion it undergoes in the future will only make the joint tighter. If you cut a joint in the middle of a humid August, the wood is swollen. When it contracts in winter, your joint opens up. I never once thought about this in 30 years of woodworking. Now I plan my most important projects for January and February. The 8th secret is the kana finish. Instead of sanding to 220 grit and then applying a sealer, Sashimono craftsmen finish their surfaces with a hand plane called a kana. It's a pulling plane, the opposite of a Western-style bench plane, and when it's properly tuned with a blade sharpened to somewhere around 8,000 grit, it produces a surface that's genuinely smoother than anything sandpaper can achieve. Here's the science behind it. Sandpaper tears wood fibers and leaves microscopic scratches. A sharp plane severs the fibers cleanly, leaving a burnished surface that actually reflects light. That surface also absorbs finish more evenly and resists moisture penetration better than a sanded surface. When I first ran my fingers across a kana-finished board of hinoki, I understood why they don't bother with sandpaper. The 9th secret is a design philosophy that goes against everything in modern manufacturing. Sashimono furniture is designed to be disassembled. Joints are built to be taken apart for repair, refinishing, or relocation. A tansu chest from the 1800s can be knocked down into individual panels, each joint cleaned and refitted and reassembled to be good for another century. Compare that to a modern bookshelf held together with cam bolts and particle board. Once one joint fails, the whole piece is garbage. Designing for disassembly requires a completely different mindset. Every joint has to be strong enough to last decades, but clever enough to come apart intentionally when needed. The 10th secret isn't a technique at all, it's a practice. In the Sashimono tradition, apprentices spend their first years mastering a single joint, not building projects, not learning. Finishing. Just cutting one type of joint thousands of times until the movement is unconscious and the fit is perfect. We tend to jump from project to project, learning a little about a lot of techniques. The Sashimono approach is the opposite. Go deep on one thing before moving to the next. When I forced myself to spend 3 months doing nothing but cutting mortise and tenon joints by hand, my accuracy improved more than it had in the previous 10 years combined. Let me share some patterns I've noticed over the years, things I used to do myself, that this tradition handles completely differently. The first pattern is reaching for glue to compensate for a loose joint. Most of us do it. The joint's a little sloppy, so we fill the gap with wood glue and clamp it tight and tell ourselves it'll hold. In Sashimono, if the joint needs glue to stay together, the joint isn't finished yet. The mechanical fit does the work. The second pattern is trusting measurements over test fitting. I used to cut everything to a number off a ruler and assume it would fit. Sashimono craftsmen scribe directly from the mating piece. The actual wood is the reference, not an abstraction on a tape measure. The third pattern is treating wood movement as a defect instead of a feature. We buy kiln-dried lumber and seal the end grain and use expansion gaps like we're trying to prevent a disease. Sashimono craftsmen accept movement as inevitable and engineer their joints to benefit from it. The fourth pattern is sanding everything smooth and calling it finished. We've been trained to think that higher grit sandpaper means a better surface, but sanding creates a fuzzy, scratched surface at the microscopic level. A properly planned surface is structurally different and functionally superior. The good news is, once you see these patterns for what they are, you can start shifting your approach one project at a time. You don't have to throw out your pocket hole jig tomorrow. Just start paying attention to how the wood wants to move, and let that guide your next joint. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. This is the marking technique that changed my layout work permanently. In Sashimono practice, when laying out a mortise, The craftsman does not measure the width of the mortise with a ruler. Instead, he takes the actual tenon piece, holds it directly against the mortise piece, and scribes both edges of the tenon onto the mortise stock using a Kubiki marking gauge set to 0. The gauge blade is essentially just transferring the exact width of the real tenon onto the real mortise piece. No numbers involved at all. Then for depth, he does the same thing, using the actual length of the tenon to set the depth mark on the mortise. Every dimension comes from the actual mating piece, not from a measurement. When I started doing this, my joints went from good to nearly perfect almost overnight. The reason is simple. Rulers lie. Wood doesn't. Your tape measure might say 3/4 of an inch, but the actual tenon might be 23/64 or 25/64, depending on your saw blade, your fence, the humidity that day. By scribing directly from the piece, you eliminate every source of accumulated error. It takes about 30 seconds longer than measuring, and it makes every joint better. Try it on your next project and see for yourself. One more thing before I let you go. I spent a long time gathering the best ancient Eastern woodworking methods I have come across, and I put them all into a book called Kenji's Workshop. 100 techniques that most modern woodworkers have never seen, with step-by-step photos and clear explanations you can actually follow in your shop. Scan the QR code on screen right now, or grab it from the first link in the description. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.